imagine. You get invited to your boss's wedding. The date is set. The wedding hall is booked. Just a small detail, or rather a big one. There's no bride yet. Soo-yeon cannot believe her ears. How can you get married if there's no fiancé to start with? And that's not all. She's in charge of finding a wife for her boss, President Moojin? Chairman Tai is leaving his son no choice. He will get married this year. End of the discussion. Soo-yeon has been working in the company for 4 years now. She always wanted to be the perfect assistant, even took barista classes to know how to make the perfect coffee. She could always handle everything, but this time it was a bit different. Finding a wife for someone is an already big challenge, but finding a bride for someone you're in love with, that's even harder. Soo-yeon comes into the office and obviously looks exhausted. She's a wreck, and her co-workers are noticing it too. But no excuses, it's time to start the day. President Moojin calls Soo-yeon in. Time to brief him about the morning schedule. Her face lights up instantly as soon as she enters the room. She seems to be daydreaming, and it's not the first time that this is happening. The president looks dazzling, a pair of 2 ocean blue eyes. It's so easy to get lost in them. Elegant looking fingers. Whoever the bride will be, she'll be the one lucky girl. Secretly, she has been in love with her boss for years. And now she finds herself dreaming about herself in their wedding dress. But that's not reality. It's up to her to find a woman that could meet the president's standards. It'll have to be a girl that comes from a prestigious family. That girl will be so lucky to be in the president's arms. You only meet a man like that once in a lifetime. The phone goes off, but Soo-yeon seems to be a bit off guard. The president reminds her to take the phone call. A little embarrassed, she decides to step outside and take the call. The phone screen displays Dad as the caller ID. Her eyes widen in surprise. Dad is calling? Soo-yeon hesitates for a moment, her hand trembling as she picks up the phone. Her heart starts to race as she answers. On the other end of the call, a solemn voice delivers the news. Soo-yeon's eyes well up with tears, and her grip of the phone tightens. Soo-yeon enters the room again and looks at her boss. Her expression shifts from shock to a mix of emotions. Her eyes fill with tears, and she clutches the phone to her chest. Soo-yeon asks for permission to leave work immediately. Her dad is in the hospital, and his condition is critical. She needs to be with him, and decides to work by her dad's side. The room was filled with gentle hum of machines and the occasional hushed whisper of the nurses as they went about their duties. As the day wears on, Soo-yeon's eyelids begin to droop. She struggles to stay awake, exhaustion taking its toll. Suddenly, the president arrives. He approaches her, his footsteps almost inaudible. He notices the exhaustion etched on her face. Without a second thought, he took a soft, warm blanket from a nearby cabinet and draped it gently over her, ensuring she was comfortable. Soo-yeon wakes up, her heart pounding in her chest. Disoriented and bewildered, she scans the room, trying to make sense of the abrupt awakening. She notices the president is here. He's standing near the window, his silhouette outlined by the gentle moonlight. It's her crush, who had been the star of her dreams. He was now an unexpected guest in her room. Feeling embarrassed and confused, she tries to understand what's going on here. She glances at the clock. It's 10 p.m. Oh no. Thinking of her boss's schedule, she realizes that he's not supposed to be here at all. Anxiously, she takes her phone and says she arranged the blind date for her boss. The president has the biggest grin on his face. He leans forward and tells Soo-yeon he's done with blind dates. Soo-yeon couldn't believe what she heard. Her boss, the man she had admired from afar, was giving up on blind dates? Going to one of those blind dates means that the president could find someone that would make him happy. Soo-yeon keeps encouraging her boss to go, because no blind date also means no marriage. The president says it's fine, that no one can force him to get married. It's not what he wants in life right now. Well, the morning comes around. The doctor tells Soo-yeon and her brother Soo-min that their father's recovery is going well. Their father is also a big CEO. His assistant came to check in on him as well. Unfortunately, though, the company is not doing too well. If the chairman doesn't wake up, things will get even worse. There's been a downwards trend in the stock prices. Soo-yeon worked on a plan all night to save her father's company, called Gaon. She hands over the sheet with the details to her brother, but he doesn't seem to appreciate it. He tells Soo-yeon she had always been more interested in modern pursuits, like pursuing her own career and exploring life outside the family business. With all those bitter words hanging in the air, Sumin storms out of the room, leaving Suyeon alone with her conflicted emotions. She feels guilty and wonders if she could quit her job to come back to the family company. Suyeon made up her mind. She wants to take her responsibilities and help the family with the company. We see the president outside on the phone. He's ordering one of his workers to buy as many Gawon stock as possible. As soon as he finishes the phone call, he heads back inside to face his father. The chairman is obviously disappointed and doesn't agree with his son's choices of not going to the blind date. He believed that his son needed a push to step out of his comfort zone and find love. President Moojin seems to be very relaxed about the whole situation and even mocks it a little bit. He tells his father he went to the hospital to visit Suyeon's father. It was an excuse for him to not go to that blind date. We're back in the office. Suyeon, her co-workers, they're all worried about her. Her manager feels guilty too because she was the one who suggested that Suyeon should be in charge of the organizing for the wedding. She wonders if it's all too much for her. Suyeon decides to be honest about it, and since she wanted to help her brother and father out, she agrees to keep arranging the blind dates and to work for the company for 1 more month and not any longer. Her manager agrees with the proposal. So 1 more month to wrap things up with the company, but also with the man she's been in love with for years. It's now up to Suyeon to teach her co-workers to make the perfect coffee. It's the big test to find out whether he's right for the job. If the president doesn't drink the coffee, her co-worker fails the test. The president barely touches his drink. Seems like someone failed his test. It worries Suyeon. She wants to make sure she leaves her job in the right hands before she leaves. She decides to do some overtime. A lot of overtime. She's the only one left in the office. Or so she thought. The president is still here too. He came up to her to tell her it's time to call it a day. They go home together. The president even makes a suggestion to take Suyeon home himself. It makes Suyeon nervous. The thought of being in the same car as the president? Out of nowhere, the president decides to ask Suyeon if she's going to leave the company. She did not expect him to know it already, but decided to answer truthfully. She wants to know if she was a good assistant to him. Suyeon cannot believe her ears. The president is calling her beautiful. She's blushing, unable to meet the president's eyes. She'd always been self-conscious about her appearance and had never believed anyone would compliment her. Suyeon decides to take a taxi. Being in the same car would just be too much for her right now. Even the president seems a bit shy. The next day, Suyeon gets a phone call from her dad's assistant. He's saying there'll be a meeting soon regarding her father's health. It looks like he won't be able to go to the company for a while, and they really do need a CEO. Suyeon suggests for her brother that he should take over the job, but he's been missing. No one actually knows where he is. He left a little note saying that, well, he was sorry. If they don't find a new CEO, well, then the company will be controlled by an outsider. When Suyeon found out that the president is one of the largest shareholders, she felt utterly betrayed. She believes the president was taking advantage of her family's vulnerability. She instantly gets back to the office to convince the president that her brother should be the new CEO. However, when she enters the room, she accuses him of betraying her trust. The president doesn't like Suyeon's tone and says her brother should have come instead of sending her. Hearing those words, it makes her even more upset. She takes a pen and a paper and finally gives her resignation letter. How could she be so wrong about her boss? The man she thought was friendly and willing to help out others, that she was in love with. There's not much time left. Suyeon needs to head back to her family's company because they're going to be picking a new CEO. She goes in and tries to convince everyone that her brother should be the one leading the company. The board is about to vote, but they don't seem to be very fond of Suyeon's brother. He's too inexperienced. Just as the discussion was heating up, President Moojin enters the room. The board members fell silent. With a confident smile, the president announces that he thinks that Suyeon should be the new CEO. The board members seem to be hesitant about it. They don't want a woman being in charge of the company, and they claim Suyeon doesn't have the right experience for it. Suyeon looks sad and even starts to doubt herself. But there's the president who's got her back. To everyone's surprise, no one else had a business plan or a vision like Soo-yin's. The president leaves, but Soo-yin goes after him. She's really grateful that she got his help. Soo-yin's co-workers are happy for her success. They're also missing her a lot. In the meantime, Soo-yin has become CEO now. Even with all her success, she still carries a heavy burden within herself. She was plagued by insecurity and self-doubt. She couldn't shake the feeling that her success was a mere stroke of just luck, and that she didn't deserve her position. As she took on her role as CEO, she noticed that some of the employees were whispering behind her back, regretting the hasty resignation letter she had submitted to her ex-boss. She realized that she owed it to herself and her colleagues to do things right, and that meant rewriting her resignation letter. Now, once the letter was completed, she decided that she needed to hand-deliver it to the president himself. She felt that a face-to-face conversation would help convey her sincerity and commitment to leaving the company on, of course, good terms. President Moojin was exhausted. He returned to his home after a long day filled with meetings, briefings, and of course, negotiations. All he wanted was a moment of peace and solitude. But as he entered his home, he noticed an unexpected present in his house. Soo-yin admits she was there to talk to the chairman. She wants to help the president by convincing his father to cancel the wedding. She knows the chairman is arranging the wedding, but she asked him to reconsider. The president deserves to marry for love, not duty. The president is not happy about it. He feels like it's not her business to take care of it. However, her eyes flashed with the determination. She understands, but she can't stand by and watch the president marry someone he barely knows, someone he might not even love. But just then, the spark of an idea is ignited in her eyes. She speaks the words she was thinking, finally out and loud. What if he married me? Soo-yin just realized what she said. What was she thinking? The chairman? On the other hand, seems to question if Soo-yin has the time to even worry about him right now. She's a CEO now, after all, and the company is in big financial trouble. The president looks Soo-yin in the eyes and straight up asks her if she can shed some light on the situation. What's causing the financial difficulties, and how can they fix them? Soo-yin had been preparing for a high-stakes board meeting. Suddenly, she found herself at a loss for words. She had expected the board to ask her about this sooner or later, but now that the moment had arrived, she couldn't find a coherent response. Her mind felt like a tangled web of complex financial data, and she couldn't unravel it in a clear explanation. The president gives her a day to come up with an answer. Why would he take her serious about the wedding if she can't even answer an important question regarding her own company? Soo-yin doesn't know what to think. Is this what she deserves? We see the chairman talking to his son. Soo-yin definitely left one hell of an impression. The president, however, he felt a surge of anger. He'd always been fiercely independent and had chosen to focus on his career and personal growth. The idea of his father pushing him into marriage, it felt like an invasion of his autonomy. Tensions had reached a breaking point, and the once loving relationship between father and son was strained to its limits. As their arguments escalated, harsh words were exchanged, and the frustrations boiled over. The chairman even brings the president's mother in this, saying she would be disappointed in having such a heartless son. The words hung heavily in the air, and a deafening silence followed. The president, taken aback by the outburst, felt a rush of emotions. He had never expected his father to say something so hurtful. Soo-yin thinks she finally figured it out. She's been reviewing the numbers of a couple of times, and the conclusion is that the operating expenses are too high. She instantly takes her phone to let the president know, but he answers that she needs to find the leak. Soo-yin decides that she's going to work even harder now. She can gradually become a true CEO if she keeps up the good work. The board meeting is about to begin, and the board members explain to Soo-yin that she'll have to take the responsibility for even the dirty work. One of the members orders her to refill his cup of tea. It's embarrassing. He obviously hasn't accepted Soo-yin as a CEO yet. Suddenly, the president walks in. His sudden appearance sent shockwaves through the room, and everyone fell silent. their eyes fixed on him. When the meeting is over, Soo-yeon and the president go outside. He sighs deeply, his eyes reflecting the burden he carried. He tells Soo-yeon he went to a funeral today. One of his ex-workers died because of a heart attack. It happened just a day after he fired him. The president tells that he can't shake the feeling that the stress of losing his job played a part in what happened. Soo-yeon tries to comfort him, saying it was just a terrible situation. He couldn't have known that that would happen. She takes his hands and invites the president to dinner. Now, the president hesitates for a moment, but decides to stay cool and rejects the offer. He's not hungry. Soo-yeon's heart sank at his response, but she tries to hide her disappointment. We're finally getting to learn a bit more about the president and his true feelings. Seems like he always was a bit envious of the assistant manager Jung-woo Jeon for being able to lightheartedly smile at her. Turns out the president always kind of liked Soo-yeon as well, but she doesn't know that. It's a new day and there's another meeting going on. The CEO, Soo-yeon, explains that the operating expenses are too high and she wants everyone to brainstorm on how they can cut the costs. Soo-yeon feels like she did well today, and it's all thanks to President Moojin. He makes her feel more confident. She's decided she's ready to do a media interview. Her assistant makes the appointment. Soo-yeon's old co-workers call in to check on her. She's the one in charge now of arranging the blind dates. She's been ordered to create opportunities for the president to meet women at least once a week. Soo-yeon feels conflicted and feels very strange hearing about this, but it couldn't be any of her concern anymore. Assistant manager Jung-woo Jeon has always been fond of Soo-yeon and decides to congratulate her on becoming CEO. The president just happened to walk by and sees the text. Certain images are popping up in his head. Jung-woo didn't notice the president was standing behind him. He gets ordered to get back to work right away. Someone is a little bit jealous, it seems like. Heads turned and conversation hushed as all eyes were drawn to the stunning figure that had just entered the office. She was a vision of beauty and confidence, her presence commanding attention effortlessly. Her name was Gina Yo, and she was there to interview the president. As she entered the president's office, her heart raced. She had seen pictures of him in the media, but not in person. He was even more handsome and charismatic in real life. Gina Yo had always been professional in her work, but she just couldn't deny the attraction she felt for him. As the interview progressed, she found herself becoming more engrossed in the president and his presence. She struggled to maintain her professionalism, her thoughts occasionally drifting to scenarios that had nothing to do with the interview. The president, however, remained focused on discussing the company's strategies and goals for the future. The next day, Soo-yeon checks her phone. She was met with a barrage of notifications and headlines that left her stunned. The news had turned the story around, twisting the professional interview into a romance rumor. Soo-yeon's heart sank as she scrolled through the gossip-filled articles and social media posts that were blowing up the internet, feeling a mixture of both anger and sadness. She couldn't believe what was happening. This can't be true. The president receives a text message containing a link to the online article. His heart raced as he clicked on the link, and his face turned a deep shade of red as he read the content. Furious and bewildered, the president stormed out of his office and confronted his assistant, who had been responsible for managing his public image and media relations. "How could this happen?" he demanded, his voice a mixture of anger and disbelief. Miss Lee explains that it was the chairman's office that published the article. The president's angry and disappointed. No more room for mistakes. All the assistants out. Miss Lee doesn't know how she's supposed to fix this. And then there's also still the date she was supposed to plan for president this week. Suddenly, she's got an idea. Soo-yeon! Well, she calls her up. Miss Lee gives her Soo-yeon a call and explains the situation. She needs Soo-yeon to go on a date with the president this week since she no longer works at the company anymore. It shouldn't be a problem. Soo-yeon agrees, but only on one condition. She wants to ask him out herself. No one needs to arrange anything for her. Soo-yeon takes her phone and sends the president a text. She thanks him for all the help she's been getting lately and wants to treat him for dinner. The president, however, is not impressed. He declines. Soo-yeon wants to try one more time. She really wants to go on a dinner with the president. There's still some questions she has regarding work too, but if it's really a bother for the president, she'll accept it. 5 minutes later, she gets a response. Suyun anxiously clicks on the text. Oh my lord. He accepted. Suyun's heart soared with joy and she read the response. She couldn't believe he had said yes, and a radiant smile spread across her face. Tuesdays had always been the most dreadful day of the week for Suyun, but this particular Tuesday was different. She had something to look forward to, something that had been occupying her thoughts and keeping her spirit high all week, the date she had planned with the president. The week leading up to the date had felt like an eternity. She counted down the days, eagerly awaiting the opportunity to see her dream man again. Her excitement had grown with each passing moment, and she couldn't help but daydream about their dinner together. The president was on his way. He took a cab, or a taxi. Checking his phone, he realized time was running out. He only had 15 minutes left before the date, and it was clear that he might not make it in time if he stayed in the taxi. With a surge of determination, he makes a decision. He turned to the taxi driver and said, I'm really sorry, but I think I need to get out here. Traffic is moving so slow, I don't want to keep my date waiting. With even 5 minutes left to spare, the president arrives at the restaurant, having ran there. Suyun is already here though, of course. She looks really pretty. The pair sits down and order a meal. The food looks delicious. As Suyun and the president are discussing some business plans, the door swings open. A stunning woman with blonde hair entered, wearing a striking red dress that drew the eyes of everyone in the room. She confidently makes her way through the restaurant. Suyun recognizes one woman from a photo. This woman went on a blind date with the president a month ago or so. Well, they were supposed to go on a blind date, but the president pretended to be sick that day. Finally, the woman couldn't contain her curiosity any longer and asked, So, are you two on a blind date? The president answered her, No, actually, this is a real date. The president asks her politely to leave, but the blonde woman's lips tighten slightly as she focuses her attention to Suyun. Who are you then? I can't believe it. It's not fair that he's here with you. The president would never date a girl like you. Suyun gets super uncomfortable hearing those words and doesn't know how to respond. Luckily, the president quickly comes to her defense. It doesn't matter where she comes from, whether she's rich or not. Suyun is better than you. The blonde woman is clearly not amused with this answer. She furiously decides to finally leave. With a moment, Suyun feels somewhat embarrassed, wondering what to think or how to feel about the situation. She decides to let it go and takes a glass of wine. And after a second glass, her inhibitions began to fade, and her confidence actually grew. Suyun leans in closer, her eyes twinkling with mischief. What if we let our PR team write a romance rumor about us? I'll protect you, just like you protected me. What is Suyun talking about? The couple heads outside. Suyun definitely needs some fresh air. She's still a bit drunk. With a giggly enthusiasm, Suyun grabbed President Mujin's hand, her eyes twinkling with mischief. I bet you're a city boy who's never seen the stars up close. Let's get out of here and find a place where we can really see them together. But there's work tomorrow. This is on a weekday. The president doesn't think it's a good idea. Well, we go back in time to 9 years ago, to be precise. We see Suyun in a wine bar, together with a friend. The place was abuzz with laughter, music, and the clinking of glasses, creating the perfect atmosphere for a fun night out. Suyun's eyes drifted across the crowded room and landed on a handsome man standing at the bar. It's President Mujin himself. And he was the kind of guy who commanded attention effortlessly. His easy charisma seemed to make him the center of the room's attention. Suyun couldn't help but notice that her crush was attracting a lot of attention from the ladies at the bar. Women nearby were stealing glances, giggling, and trying to catch his eye. It was clear that he was a popular figure in the local scene. We see a pretty and popular girl going up to Mujin. She tries to ask him out, but gets rejected. No one saw that one coming. Mujin must have high standards. Suddenly, a man goes up to Sion and her friend. He introduced himself as the president of K-Media. He instantly starts to ask questions. He wants to know the girls' names, ages. Suyun and her friend exchanged a quick glance. They felt somewhat uneasy about this person's persistent and overbearing demeanor. Definitely seems like the obsessive type. Finally, Suyun, feeling uneasy, decided to excuse herself. I don't feel too well, she said with a forced smile. I think I'll go outside for some fresh air. The man frowned but didn't object as Suyun got up and headed towards the stairs. Her heart raced as she walked the stairs, hoping to escape the increasingly uncomfortable situation. To her dismay, the man followed her out. but keeping a few steps behind her. Suyun's unease deepened as she realized she was being followed. Why is this man following her? She's clearly not interested in this guy at all. As Suyun finally reaches the top floor, she opens the door to go to the roof. Please, someone be there. There is someone. Thank God. It's the guy from before, President Mujin? Mujin explains that she's not supposed to be here. The place is off limits. Soyeon rushed over to Mujin, her voice trembling as she explained, I'm sorry to bother you, but this guy won't leave me alone. He's making me really uncomfortable. Mujin turned his attention to the guy following Soyeon, his stern expression conveying that he would not tolerate any misbehavior. Is this true? He asked, his tone unwavering. At first it looked like the two men would start a fight, but realizing that he had no chance against Mujin, the guy finally backs down. He turned and left the rooftop, his presence no longer casting a shadow over Soyeon. She breathed a sigh of relief and thanked Mujin for his intervention. She knew that she had been fortunate to find support in such a critical moment. The president, however, seems a bit bothered. We're back in the present. In the warmth of the taxi, Soyeon dozed off. By the time she had arrived at her house, she was fast asleep. The president helped her out of the taxi. Soyeon's mother, who had been waiting up, was a bit surprised to see her daughter in such a state, but appreciated Mujin's responsible actions. She thanked him and led them inside the house. Soyeon's mother showed them the way to the bedroom, her cheeks tinged with a hint of embarrassment. I'm sorry about this, she said to Mujin. She can be quite a handful when she's had too much to drink. The president assures her it's no problem at all. Seeing that Soyeon was clutching onto his jacket with a sleepy determination, he decided to let her have it for the night. He gently slipped the jacket off and covered her with it, making sure she was warm and comfortable. Soyeon's mother smiled appreciatively, realizing that Mujin was not only a responsible and caring man, but also a gentleman. Thank you so much for taking care of her, she said softly. President Mujin finally gets home and his father is still up. He knows his son went out on a date with Soyeon and wants to know all the details. It's obvious he likes her and he's making jokes. He even hints at grandchildren already. The chairman's noticing that his son is reacting differently than usual. Maybe this time he really does like Soyeon. The next day, President Mujin anxiously checked his phone, hoping for a text. He wanted to hear from Soyeon, to know if she was feeling all right. However, hours passed and Mujin's phone remained silent. Doubt and uncertainty crept in as he wondered if Soyeon was avoiding him or had simply lost interest. Finally, unable to resist any longer, he decided to take the plunge and send her a message. Didn't you see my jacket? Soyeon responds, No, I didn't. We go back to Soyeon. Turns out she's lying and she does have the jacket. However, the lie weighed on her conscience. She felt guilty about her actions. She was about to text Mujin back, but her assistant needs her. Soyeon had recently decided to organize a reunion with her former co-workers from her previous job. She had fond memories of the team and wanted to reconnect with her old friends. The day of the reunion had arrived, and she was filled with excitement. However, when she arrives, she was surprised to find only one person waiting for her. The rest of her former colleagues were nowhere in sight. Soyeon couldn't help but feel a mixture of disappointment and confusion. Soyeon's old co-workers, on the other hand, greet her with a warm smile, genuinely happy to see her. Soyeon, though, a bit taken aback by the absence of the others, decided to make the best of the situation and enjoy the company of her old friend. They started reminiscing about their time working together, sharing stories and laughter. As they began discussing work-related topics, Soyeon couldn't help but bring up her former boss. We see our President Mujin having dinner with his brother? Anyone who's part of the Taesong family knows the brothers are not on the best terms. There are even other family members constantly eyeing the chairman's spot, ready to take it over. The tension between them was palpable. Even one of them nursing a glass of wine during dinner. President Mujin finally decided to address the issue that had been bothering him. I've heard some rumors that you've been using company funds for our questionable activities. You know that's wrong, right? His brother looks away, a guilty expression on his face. He had indeed been using company money funds to some extravagant personal expenses, hoping to maintain his lavish lifestyle. They finished their meal in silence, and the unresolved issues kept hanging in the air between them. The wine had been doing nothing more than just easing the tension, and as they parted ways that night, they knew their relationship was at a crossroads, and their family's company future hung in the balance. Sitting in the back seat of the taxi, President Mujin gazed out the window, his thoughts wandering, as the taxi passed by a bustling restaurant and a bar. His heart skipped a beat. He demands the driver to stop the car immediately, because he had spotted Suyin with one of his co-workers, or one of his workers, Mr. Yon. On top of that, he also seemed drunk. Guy can barely walk. With every passing moment, Mr. Yon grew more enamored with Suyin, the girl who had captured his heart. He wanted to tell her about his true feelings, but Suyin could listen to his confession. Her phone rang loudly, shattering the moment. She quickly answered the call, her face with a mix of surprise and concern. The president explained that he had never gotten a reply to his text, and he really wanted his jacket back. As Suyin spoke on the phone, Mr. Yon watched her. He couldn't tell her. He wanted to tell her. He wanted to confess to her. But as Mr. Yon watched her, his heart kept pounding in his chest. He had almost revealed his feelings, and now the timing seemed all wrong. Suyin wrapped up the call and turned back to him. Her brow furrowed. She explained something important came up. She needs to go. And so, they part ways.